Rod and Jeannie Robinson, and we teach the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders.
We decided that we could serve because that was something we could do and we could manage, and it's really easy. It's not hard. It's all laid out.
True.
Callie just says, here's what you do, and you do it.
It is very easy.
We do this every other week, so we have some time, for ourselves in the month, and it works out great.
Yeah.
And you have fun doing it, and the kids love you, and it's such a rewarding venture because they are just out there grasping and looking for things that they can do and learn about Jesus, and you can help in their lives.
And these are our future leaders, right? So we got to sow good stuff into their lives.
Yeah.
For just a little bit of effort, you can make an eternal difference in these kids' lives.
You serve, I serve. This life I lose, I will follow you.
I love what Rod said there in that video. Did you notice that? He said just for a little bit of effort, you can make an eternal difference. And that's really what this series is all about, is that we are serving others in all of our life and making a difference for eternity. We're in this series called Made for Great. I want to wrap it up today. And I love the idea of shifting gears, going to the next level. And that's my encouragement for you, is that wherever you're at in your spiritual journey, some of you may just be beginning, you may just be considering following Christ. That you'd say, okay, I'm going to get in first gear in this relationship, and I'm going to begin to live the purpose and plan that God has for me. Others of you have been followers of Christ for a long time. And to realize God made you for great. And part of that greatness is that you're continuing to live like Jesus lived and to serve like Jesus served. I want to welcome Church Online. Glad you guys are joining us. Welcome to you guys. I'm so glad you're here. This is the crowd, right? I love this crowd. Now, earlier, Mike said that some of you, it's a good morning because you're University of Arizona fans, Wildcat fans, which we are around here, okay? Except for Mike Gray, who is our Next Steps pastor. Unfortunately, he is still a heathen in that way, okay? So pray for him. He's an Oklahoma Sooners fan. No, he's a Cowboys fan. The Cowboys fan. So he needs prayer. You guys pray for him? We're a church of grace and mercy. So here's the key verse that I hope you've gotten this over the course of this series. This is a key verse of this series, Made for Great. Jesus said this in Matthew 23:11. Let's all read this out loud together. The greatest among you must be a servant. So we talked about that. We said, and I would encourage you, go back to livechurch.com. You can catch the first two. But how this radically changes our lives. This is one of the most powerful relational principles. Your relationships will change for the better as we do what Jesus said here. And it just becomes a part of our life to serve one another in love. Paul said in love. Last week we talked about how we need to take on the attitude of Jesus when it comes to service. Some of us were really challenged by that. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Today, I want to talk about our influence that we have as His servants. One of the problems with this is that we are to follow Jesus. But to follow someone means they've got to be a great leader. And we as a society do not portray Jesus as a great leader. And yet He was the greatest leader who ever lived. It took Him only 3 years to develop His brand. And now, 2,000 years later, because He did such a great job, there are hundreds of thousands of franchises still today that are thriving. He's the greatest leader who ever lived. And yet, this is how we tend to portray Him. This is I Googled, popular pictures of Jesus. And, really, you look at Him and you go, is that a leader? Because some artists, and I love artists, I'm an artist, but they portray Him like this guy who's walking around in the fields all day long holding sheep. And I don't know about you, but today, if that were happening, we'd go, who's that guy you want us to follow, Jeff? He just holds sheep all day. Well, that's not what Jesus did. He was the greatest leader who ever lived. Part of our mission is leading people who are far from God to be followers of Jesus. So we need to know Him as a great leader if we're going to follow Him. Here's another one. What I think is interesting is in the movies, if you didn't know any of the story of Jesus, and some of you may not, but if you didn't know any of His story, and I said, now who is the leader in this group? Most people would point toward this guy. We never portray Him as the great leader that He was. And here's what I'd like you to do. I want to know who you think are great leaders, besides Jesus, okay? You may not agree with me right now at this point, but who do you think is a leader? Besides Jesus, I think he is the greatest leader who ever lived. Besides Jesus, who do you think is a great leader? Who is a famous leader you admire? And if you want to tell me a little why, don't give me a lot of why, because I don't have time to read that much, okay? Give me a little why. Now, I Googled it this week and said, now, who's a portrait of a great leader? What would a portrait of a great leader look like? Here's the number one picture that comes up on Google. Isn't that amazing? Some of you are Trekkies and you're like, oh yeah, he's a great leader. You may love that. Now, if you're a sports fan, this week, Boston Red Sox, how about it? The champions. Some of you are like, what's that? Baseball. You guys didn't know it, World Series. Ortiz, man, he got the MVP. Great leadership in the sports world this year, anyway. Here's one. Some of you are business folks. This is a great leader. Jack Welch. He was the former CEO of GE. He set the modern day pace for leadership and training especially. You've probably read his books if you own a business or you're in leadership at all in the business world. Here's one that comes to mind for me immediately, Abraham Lincoln. He's one of my favorite history leaders. And the reason is because he lived leadership like Jesus told us to live it. He made it about others. And that's what I want you to get this morning out of anything. As we look at a few verses today in Scripture, I want you to get what Jesus is telling us. We are to leverage our influence for the benefit of those we lead. Would you read this with me? Leverage your influence for the benefit of those you lead. Now, immediately, some of you are checking out and you're going, oh, good, I don't have to listen today because I'm not a leader. You know, I came on the right Sunday, I can take a nap. No. We are all leaders. Now, that word lead points right back to the word influence. See, a lot of times we don't think of leadership in the church because leadership is about what could and what should be. And we think church is all about what history is all about with Jesus. But we are called really more about what could and should be. It's leadership. Leadership is simply influence. Everybody say influence. Come on, say it with me like you mean it, okay? Like you had your coffee on your way in. Leadership is? It's influence. All of us have influence. So we need to know how to leverage that influence for the benefit of those we lead. Some of you, it's a no-brainer. Some of you own companies. You're shift managers. You're leaders in your business world. And this is a no-brainer. You're like, yeah, I need to know how to do this, like Jesus did. Others of you, you're wrestling with, who do I lead? If you're a parent, you have influence over kids. If you have friends who ever ask you this question, hey, what do you think about this? I need your advice. Do you realize right at that moment you have influence? You're leading them. They're asking for leadership. If you're here today because somebody invited you, that person that invited you and got you to come to church or asked you to join online, they have influence in your life. You're leading them. The people that scare me when it comes to this are the people who say, I don't lead anybody. I don't influence anybody. That scares me because that person may not walk in accountability, realizing that they are influencing people. There are people watching us, the people you have influence with, coworkers, classmates in high school, in college, that are looking to you, and they know that you're a follower of Christ. You have influence with them. And if you're not a follower of Christ, you need to know that you're influencing people, and I want to challenge you to what end are you influencing them? We need to, let's read it together again. Church Online, read it with us. Leverage your influence for the benefit of those you... Let's make this personal. Leverage my influence for the benefit of those I lead, okay? Leverage my influence for the benefit of those I lead. So we're going to look at a few verses today to see where we get this from Scripture. Mark chapter 10. If you have your Bibles, open up. If you have uversion.com, you can join us live on there. You can communicate with one another on there as well and follow along in the Scripture. Mark is a great book to read. Here's one of the things I like about Mark. Mark was not one of Jesus' 12 apostles. So when he writes this more from our perspective. In other words, there are 12 apostles that Jesus chose that are on his inner circle. Mark's not on that inner circle. So he's more like us. He's a disciple who came along later that was not chosen in the inner circle. And as he writes this, he's writing more from my perspective, from your perspective. Now, Mark later on, he does have a cousin, Barnabas, who later becomes an apostle in Acts. We see that. And Mark did plant some churches. He went on to do that. Great ministry. But he's also a guy, one reason I like his writings is because he's a guy that was very successful in following Jesus, but early on, he got in some trouble following Jesus. In fact, he created so much problems in the church early on that Paul and Barnabas split. I mean, the Bible says they were angry at one another because of him. One of them said, we're not using this guy anymore. The other one said, no, we need to give him another chance. So I read his story and I'm like, oh, that's me. Is that you guys? You know what I'm saying? So I like his perspective. So here we go, Mark chapter 10. And we're going to go read through quite a bit of scripture here. Jesus once more began to describe everything that was about to happen to him. So they're walking up to Jerusalem. Jesus, the disciples, and then it says many of the people were following behind, just following. And they were in fear. The disciples are kind of in awe. And Jesus is about to say, here's what's happening to me, guys. The Son of Man will be betrayed. They will sentence him to die. They will what? Mock him. Come on. Flog him. Whip. And this is not good stuff, is it? Now, if I were your friend and I said, here's what's about ready to happen to me, wouldn't you at least go, oh man, I'm so sorry? How many of you would at least say, I'll whisper a prayer for you? Would you do that for me? Oh my gosh, I don't have very many friends that will pray for me, Kathy. My wife Kathy's sitting here. Honey, we're in this alone, babe. Actually, babe, did you raise your hand? Would you? Okay. But after 3 days, I'll rise again. Now, this is what he's saying. This is what's going to happen to me, guys. Now, I want you to see the very next verse. This is one conversation, and here's what's happening. Here's all the spitting, flogging, killing. This is bad stuff. This is what's going to happen to me. The very next verse, James and John, two brothers, spoke to him. Teacher, we want you to do us a favor. What happened to all that spitting and flogging and killing stuff that was happening to me? Now, James and John, they're known. Jesus called them. They are brothers. This is not James, the brother of Jesus. There are three James throughout the New Testament. You always have to make sure you know which one you're talking about. This was James, the son of Zebedee, which means he's the brother of John. Jesus called them the sons of thunder. And one of the reasons he called them that was this is who they are. They're just all out there. So James and John, at one point, Jesus went into a city, and the city wouldn't receive him. And so their attitude, James and John said, let's just blow this place up. And he didn't say that. They said, call down fire and destroy this city. I mean, that's who they were. There was either you were all in or nothing. And Jesus works with them over that. So here's the Son of Thunder, and they say, Lord, well, will you do us a favor? Now understand, at this point, the disciples think Jesus is going to establish his government, his kingdom, here and now. Rome was in charge. Rome was ruling and oppressing the people of Israel. So they were excited to have a new government that would overthrow the government of Rome. And they're thinking, okay, Lord, if you're going to rule, we want to rule with you. We want to be in charge. But the very last thing Jesus said was, here's what's about to happen to me. They're going to spit on me. They're going to mock me. They're going to flog me. This is kind of like, if you're a parent, have you ever had that moment where you're sitting down, you're telling your kids something really serious? You're just pouring out your heart, and they kind of lean across the table. They're leaning in. You're thinking they're really getting it, and they're like, are we done yet? Have you had that experience? And you're like, that's what's going on here. Jesus, they're going to kill me. They're going to spit. And they're like, can you do us a favor? Well, one of our guys, when we were talking about this scripture in staff meeting this week, getting ready for the weekend, he said, I had that experience with my kids. He was making some major ministry decision years ago, and it was going to cost their family huge financial, big pay cuts and everything to go and do this ministry. And he said, as I share it with my kids, I think they're all into it, and God's leading us to do this. And he said, one of my sons kind of raised his hand. I said, yeah, Michael. And he goes, Dad, can we go to Dairy Queen before we lose all of our money? This is that moment for Jesus and the disciples. And so Jesus goes on, though. He says, what's your request? They replied, we want to sit in your glory. When you sit on your glorious throne, we want to be in the places of honor. Look, we want to sit in the government right next to you. But Jesus said to them, you don't know what you're asking. Are you able to drink from the bitter cup of suffering? We just took communion together. And Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane said, Lord, if it's your will, let this cup pass from me. If you go all the way back to the Old Testament, you see it's the cup of suffering, the cup that he took for our sins. And it's a picture of his blood being shed. And he says, you don't understand. They didn't know yet what was about to happen. They weren't able to look back on communion on the cross like we can and understand. He said, you guys don't understand. You can't do this cup of suffering. You can't take this cup of suffering. He said, are you able to be baptized with the baptism of suffering? Are you able to go where I go? And of course, they're the sons of thunder. Yes, we can, they replied. Jesus told them, yeah, actually you will. Well, they wouldn't go to the cross. But James and John actually did give their lives for the gospel, for following Jesus. James was the first one to be martyred of the disciples for his faith. John, his brother, was exiled to the island of Patmos for the rest of his life. Now, sometimes, we think, wow, being exiled to a Mediterranean island for the rest of your life, send me. But Patmos was the place where they sent the criminals, and they did hard labor. It would be more like Alcatraz, only they were out cutting rocks for buildings back on the mainland. That's what he spent the rest of his life doing because of his faith. And Jesus said, yeah, you will, but I have no right to say who's going to sit in authority and positions in the kingdom. I don't have that right. Only God does. Now, we come on down here, and the 10 other disciples, they hear what's going on. Remember, there are 12 that are chosen as the apostles. Now, the 10 other, they heard what James and John had asked, and they were what? Now, I love this because at this point in the reading, I'm thinking, great, somebody's finally on Jesus' side. Didn't you hear what he said? Spitting, flogging, killing, and all that stuff, and you guys are asking him a favor? But unfortunately, the other 10, the reason they're indignant is because they want in on this too. So Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers in this world lord it over their people, and the officials flaunt their authority over those under them. They're saying, yeah, Lord, we know that. That's why we want in on this. We know that the Roman rulers, they are governing from the top down, and they're lording it over. We're tired of it. And if somebody's going to do that in this community, we want it to be us. And Jesus radically changes things. Now, this is a picture, really, of what it looks like. And if you're in the corporate world at all, you're at work, you know what this is. This is just a typical org chart. Senior management on top, middle management, all the way down to the staff, and then customers. And you get this, and nothing wrong with org charts, but Jesus says this is a picture of what this looks like in the world. Now, Jesus goes on here in the middle of this conversation and says something that radically changes everything that they do and everything that we should do, what we're called to live as leaders, how we are to leverage our influence for the benefit of those we lead, whoever it is you influence. He says this, let's read it together. But among you it will be, come on, read those 7 words with me again. But among you, one more time, but among you, Lord, we know that they lord it over. We know it's from the top down, and whoever's in charge, man, they have all the benefits, and we're here to serve them. And Jesus says, but among you, it will be different. What do you mean, Lord? Aren't you setting up your kingdom, and we're going to rule, and we're going to get things fixed? No, listen, among you, it will be different. And he's speaking right to us. He goes on, he says, whoever wants to be a leader among you must be a... Man, this isn't even on the radar for the Roman rulers. Serve my people? They're here to serve me. I'm at the top of the food chain. Jesus says, no, whoever among you wants to be a leader must be a servant. And whoever wants to be first among you must be the slave of everyone else. Here's what Jesus does. He turns everything upside down. Now, a couple weeks ago as we started this, I used the book Good to Great, and we talked about how, we're committed to this as a church. We always want to get better, not only in our own spiritual journey, but corporately in our spiritual growth. And I shared with you the book from Jim Collins. Most of you have probably read this if you're in the business world. And I said if you haven't, next to the Bible, this is a book you should read this year. Actually, next to my book, which is coming out in a couple weeks. That's probably first. We got the Bible, my book, and then this book, okay? Here's what's interesting to me is Jim Collins in this book, they looked at the leading, they called them top 5 level leaders in corporations around the world, of the best corporations, those who had gone from nominal or good companies and they became great companies. Jack Welch was one of those who showed you his picture a little earlier. And going into the study, Jim Collins said, we had all these assumptions of what we would find in these great leaders, but what we found shocked us. And here's what he writes about what they found in the top 5 level leaders. He said the distinguishing characteristic that all great leaders of companies had in common was humility. Wow. But among you, it will be different. You're not leading by pride and you're the man and we're all here to serve you and give you accolades. No, among you, it will be different. Here's what Jesus did. He turned the corporate org chart upside down and he said, you want to be great? You be a servant. Now, for those of you, man, you're really into leadership, and man, I totally get that. I love that. I love leadership. But you say, well, Jesus is talking against point leadership? No, that's not what he's doing at all. In fact, Jesus was a point leader, and he established point leaders. He's talking about how, as a point leader, a person of influence over anyone, if we have influence, we're to leverage it for the benefit of others. As his followers, for his kingdom. That's what it's all about. He said, you want to be great? You want to be a great leader? Hey, if I'm going to be a leader, I want to be a great one. I don't want to be a bad one. I mean, what's the alternative? You want to be great? And you got to be a servant. That's where it begins. Our vision here at Alive is that we are a life-changing experience that people are excited about sharing with others. Right, Alive? Woo! That's what Alive Church. Jesus is alive and we're alive in him and we're excited about sharing that with others. We say that we're a powerful resource for leading people to be more like Jesus. See, if we're going to lead people, if we're going to influence people to be more like Jesus, discover and fulfill their God-given purpose, we serve. Among you, it will be different. The greatest among you must be a servant. The third part of our vision statement is what we are doing is being reproduced by others locally and globally. In other words, we say not only do we want to serve people here in our community, but we've made a decision that we want to serve other churches. We're all in this together. So one of the things we're doing this year, at the beginning of next year, we've created a website for all of our creative resources that we create, and sermons and all that kind of stuff, teachings, weekend advertisement, artwork. We're putting it on and even our behind-the-scenes stuff to run things. We're putting it on a website that we're giving it away to every church that we can. We're saying, man, we want this to be, Lord, we want to serve other churches. Not only do we want to serve our community as a church, but as a church, we want to serve the church. We're a church who's part of the church, and we want to serve them. That's what we're all about. The greatest among you must be a servant. Among you, it will be different. It's got to be different. And we're saying now, I know some of you say, Jeff, you're just a pastor. You see me as your pastor, and I get that. I understand that. I know some people are like, dude, you got the greatest job in the world. You work, 3 hours a week? You get up and talk for a few minutes on Sunday? That's it. But actually, what you don't know is I spend most of my time in leadership. Even this week, we did our quarterly review. We do that every quarter. That's why it's called quarterly review. I know, that's shocking, isn't it? We got systems around here. Man, and looking at that, we want to know, are we on task with what God's called us to do, is leading us to do? And what do we need to change over the next quarter? We set goals for the next quarter to live out our mission and our vision of leading people, training people, and sending people. We want to train you in such a way that you are sent into your community, into your work world, and that you can leverage your influence for the benefit of those you lead. We want you to be prepared to do that. So we take this very seriously around here. When you ask any of my staff about leadership, we take it really serious because Jesus was the greatest leader in the world. And we know that we are leading our kids, our families, we're leading a church, we're leading this community, and we are all influencing. We're all leaders, so we take it serious. We're learning and growing as leaders every day, and we hold each other accountable for that. And we want to see us as a church do that even more so that we can influence those around us with the benefits God's given us. We can serve them and those that we influence. Now, here's a couple things that we need to do to really get this into our environments. I mean, some of you are going to get up and go to work in the morning, or maybe even this afternoon, this evening, you're going, so how does that change my life? Let me give you a couple things that you need to do. First of all, ask, what can I do to help you be successful? Get used to asking that question of those that you influence. So tomorrow morning, if you stick your head around the cubicle of that person that works for you and you ask them this question, first of all, get ready to call 911 because they may have a heart attack. They're not used to this from you maybe, but ask them, what can I do to help you be more successful? In other words, what can I do to leverage my influence and the resources that I oversee here in this company or in this relationship to make you more successful? Let me show you how this works for me. So, as a pastor here, we got a great team of people. We have staff, and we have 100+ volunteer staff as well. And so we need camera operators, even right now. It's one of the things we need, camera operators. So I asked the camera guys, so what can I do to help you guys be more successful, that team? Now, that team doesn't look at me and go, man, what we really need is for you to schedule yourself off a few weeks a month and come back and sit and run the camera. They would know, well, that kind of defeats the purpose of everything that we're doing together. They don't do that. They said, Jeff, can you use your influence to help us get some camera operators? I'm like, yeah. I can connect the dots with our congregation, with our church, between what you guys are doing and how we are leading people around the world to be followers of Christ. You may have heard, all of those of you Church Online, we announced it during the service, people are literally on from all over the United States this morning. We have over 200 people a week on average that attend Church Online from all over the world. This is our church. And to have a camera operator is just connecting the dot of saying, yeah, I'm a part of this mission of leading people who are far from God to be followers of Jesus, who are leading people who are far from God to be followers of Jesus. You see, I can use my influence to connect those dots with you guys. And some of you go, wow, you might want to go back and talk to Michael right after the service. He's sitting up there. He's the lead on that team and say, hey, I can operate a camera. I can serve the body of Christ that way. So I said, Michael, what can I do to help you be more successful? He goes, man, if you could share the vision, that's great. I can do that. The second question we need to ask is, or next thing we need to do is continually do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. And I want to encourage you, go back and listen to last week, alivechurch.com, when we talk about attitude. What is it that you can continually do for one that you wish you could do for everyone? How'd you guys do this week? That was the challenge last week. Did anybody do it? A couple of you did, all right. So let me tell you how simple this is, because during the week, some people talked to me and said, man, serving people, and you make it way too much. You think serving is doing something you hate. So for me this week, I have a passion for pastors. I want to encourage them. Right now, 400 pastors a week in the United States resign from discouragement. They just are giving up. And so I have a heart for these guys. They're doing such an important thing. I wish I could encourage every one of them. So what I did this week, for one, what I can't do for everyone. I can't encourage them all. So I wrote a letter to a pastor who's been an encouragement to me. And I said, let me encourage you. You changed my life. You had a big impact on this ministry. What you did for me, I want to do for others. That was it. And I'm going to continue to do for one what I wish I could do for everyone. We've got to live that out. We ask, what can I do to help you be more successful? And just continue. And can you imagine how your relationships change if we would live this principle out? That we would leverage our influence for the benefit of those we lead. Imagine how your marriage would change if you would just leverage your influence for the benefit of your spouse or your kids. In the work world, how does this change in your community? One of the things that we did this week was we had the party Halloween night just to meet our neighbors. We did it for our neighborhood, what we wish we could do for every neighborhood. We met 10 new neighbors this week. It was awesome. I mean, that's what it's about, getting connected and leveraging our influence for the benefit of those we lead. Now, here's the key. You must confront your ego. In other words, you must say, do I want people following me, or do I want people following Jesus? Let me be real clear around here. Our mission is leading people to be followers of Jesus. Don't follow me. Don't follow Alive Church. Don't follow any of our staff. Follow Jesus. We want to point you toward Him. And none of us are worthy of you following. You're not worth following. I'm sorry, I love you, but you're not. Not when I stand you beside Jesus. We want to point people to Jesus. In fact, we are very humbled by what Jesus said. He said, even the Son of Man, speaking of Himself, came not to be served, but to, let's read it together, but to serve others and to give His life as a ransom for many. I want you to hear the story. A young guy here at Alive. He has been taking the steps of leadership. I want this guy on our team. He's great. He's actually going to start taking over now our online pastoring stuff. And his name is Justin. Listen to his heart of being a servant.
Hi, my name is Justin Parker. I serve here at Alive and have for the last 3 years. I've worked with both the youth group and actually back in the classrooms. Had opportunities for both were available when I first started coming into Alive, and I really felt an urge or a need to serve. So I actually did all the foundations classes, and it really helped me kind of focus as to what my passion is in life, what my strengths are, and the gifts God gave me, so I could use those in a ministry way. For a while, I felt like God was really leading me into working more with adults. Recently, there was an opportunity that came basically open for working with church online. That's kind of where my passion is actually building relationships with people, talking to them about God, being available so that when things come up, life does that they have someone to talk to, someone they know. And especially on the online communities where you can't physically be here, it's nice to have someone where you build a relationship with them, where you can actually, throughout the week have prayer requests or interact throughout the week to actually help them in their journey. Serving is a tough thing for a lot of people, and I think it's a fear. They have a fear of stepping out and doing anything with their faith because they're not sure they have the time, they're not sure if they're equipped for whatever they're going to do serving-wise. My suggestion has always been just do it. And I think that's hard, and that might not be as encouraging as it might need to be for some people, but the reality is serving, there's no greater reflection of your faith than when you serve. Because if you really look at it, if you break down Jesus to his core, he was a servant before anything else. And being able to serve, you're not only going to learn so much about your own faith and yourself, but then you're going to also be able to learn a lot about other people too. And I think service not only gives you that avenue to connect with people, but also I think is the number one thing to grow your faith. Serving, showing people what you believe, but through your service, ultimately is what's going to be, I think, the biggest faith grower that you can do.
Woo! Everybody welcome Justin to the team. Glad to have you. Was I running these all back while you guys were watching? Sorry. It's like setting something on your keyboard, I guess I was sitting on it. Justin, one of the things Justin talked about was he said that a lot of us, we don't do this because of fear. What if I get taken advantage of? No, listen, among you it will be different. Let's do what Jesus did. I asked you earlier, who's a famous leader that you like? Several of you responded. I can't read them all. Somebody said George S. Patton Jr., great general of World War II. Everybody know who he is? History. Mother Teresa, helping the poor, FDR, and Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs come through several times this weekend. Steve Jobs, founder of Apple, for those of you who don't know, created a technological revolution in the 70s, 90s. Awesome. Here somebody said Shane Doan, Phoenix Coyotes captain. John Maxwell, I think he's a great leader. I love his books. In fact, I had the privilege, John Maxwell, before he was who he is, he was just starting to speak to leaders, and I got to go, now you can't hardly pay to see the guy, but I got to go be with him when there were 40 people in the room. And he was just, in fact, I had to be forced to go by my pastor at the time. I'm like, I don't want to go waste my time with some guy talking about leadership. And it changed my life. I was in my early 20s. In fact, the one thing I'll never forget about that moment was there was an ice cream truck going by. And Maxwell stopped. He goes, is that an ice cream truck? And he sent his guy. He said, go out and buy everybody here ice cream. And he went and bought us all ice cream. And I'm like, I like this guy. This is my kind of leader. Sorry, there's no ice cream truck. If you ever hear one during service, I will buy you all ice cream, okay? Now, here's what I want you to do. If you would, take out your connection card. And on there, I want you to just, let's apply this week. Take the next step. You imagine if we all lived this principle out, that we would leverage our influence for the benefit of those we serve. Let's be the generation that changes how Christians are looked at in the marketplace, in our neighborhoods. Let's be the generation that changes as to where people say, there's something about them that's appealing to me. Next step, I will leverage my influence by serving on a ministry team here at Alive. We gave you a little, you can get going with us and being a part of this team. It's in your handout. Church Online, you can do this as well. Or I will ask those I influence, what can I do to help you be successful? And I want to be praying for you this week. Just do it for a week, okay? These are first-time serve opportunities. Just start asking that question this 1 week. If you come back next week and go, I hated it, then it's okay. We'll take the principles of Jesus and say, okay, how are you going to apply them to your life? Okay, I look forward to seeing you next week. Let's pray. Drop these in the offering plate here in just a moment. Father, thank you for your presence in our lives. Jesus Christ, you led the way in leadership. You are by far the greatest leader who ever lived. In fact, most leadership books ultimately point back to your principles. Would you help us as a church to leverage our influence for the benefit of those we serve? If you're here today and you've never made a decision to follow Christ, that's where it starts. Just pray this prayer. Say, Lord, I want to invite you into my life. Help me to serve you. I want to live out the purpose and plan you have for my life. Would you help me to live the great life that you have for me? And I pray that over all of us and this church in Jesus' name. Amen.
Hi, welcome to Church Online. My name is Justin Parker, as you probably just saw my video. I'm actually going to be working with you guys now as the Church Online guy. There's a couple of things I just want to let you in on real quick. First of all, we're going to be having a Church Online life group starting in January, so be on the lookout for details about that. We definitely have some good opportunities there for you guys to build connections with each other. Also, we're also going to have some of the Church Online is going to have the Foundations classes available. The Foundations classes are the 3 classes that we do here at Alive that actually help you find your purpose in God. I went through those classes. They're amazing. We're going to have more information about that. That will be coming up soon as well. Also, please fill out your connection cards. That link that's underneath the chat window right now, click that. That's actually a great way for me to know what I can be praying for you for, and things going on through life I can help connect with you during the week. Also, something we're going to start new next week is we're going to actually have live pastor questions. So you're going to be able to submit questions throughout the service, and Jeff is actually going to come back here and actually answer 1 or 2 of them after service. So you can, a good way for you to connect with Jeff, and if you have any questions you would like him to answer, that's a good way for you to, provide that to him. Just want to thank you for viewing Church Online. It's going to be a great experience. We're going to try to make this as fun and involving as we can. If you have anything that you would like to talk with me about, you can put that on that comment or on the connection card. That's a great resource. Also, if you have anything else throughout the week, those actually come to me. So please fill those out. It's very crucial that we actually have those on file. The next steps for this week, please take a look at those and enjoy your week.
My sweetheart, I belong with you, you belong with me, my sweetheart. Now I belong with you, you belong with me, my sweetheart. I belong with you, you belong with me, my sweetheart.
tonight, if you are married or thinking about getting married or hope to be married one day, this series is for you. You won't want to miss that. It's coming up in a couple of weeks. Mac and Nancy are here, and if you have any prayer needs today, they would love to pray with you today, so be sure to see them before you leave. Come back next week. I can't wait to see you then. You're dismissed.